Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto Naruto Next Generations discussion on the fallout from Boruto Chapter 74. And today, we need to have a very real conversation about the elephant in the room going into Chapter 75, which is Naruto's finally told Amado, enough with the games, tell me what you're planning and don't play any more games with us. So in today's video, I want to look at what Amado's true motive might be and take a suggestion from one of you guys that you sent to me and build on top of it. Ever since we first met Amado, he's been the walking definition of an unreliable narrator. He's constantly mixing in the truth with lies or omitting information so that he can maintain leverage or keep himself indispensable to Naruto and Konoha, all while moving other pieces on the board into favorable positions so that he can achieve his desired outcomes. We're dealing with someone who has the balls to play 4D chess with Ishiki to bring down Kara from within, kill Jigen, destroy Ishiki, and set the stage to be the only person who can control Kawaki's new karma. But the question is, why will he go through so much in order to gain possession of and control Kawaki's new power? According to one of you guys, it might be because Amado is seeking to gain the power of the Otsutsuki God. And I wanted to discuss the validity of this, how it can work narratively, and what actually supports this idea. As we all know, when Ishiki passed away, he told Ko to feed Boruto or Kawaki to the Ten Tails in order to begin harvesting the planet to make a chakra fruit, and then move from planet to planet, harvesting multiple planets, eating multiple chakra fruits to become an Otsutsuki God. Now, from this very moment, there have been two trains of thoughts here. So one was that there was a literal Otsutsuki God out there, and the second is that the Otsutsuki God is merely a concept, something that one aspires to reach in order to reach that level of status. The idea sent to me makes use of this second point, which is that the Otsutsuki God is merely a concept, and that's a concept that Amado's trying to turn into a reality, and that is something that Amado would have heard Jigen speaking about. Now, this is where I'm going to add my part to it. So that doesn't seem like it's crazy. When we add in the fact that Amado, if this is true, he wouldn't be the first person trying to gain Kawaki's power. This does make sense, especially because he wouldn't be the first human trying to gain Kawaki's power. In the car actuation arc, we learned that Victor made plans to both copy data on Kawaki and outright steal Kawaki for what are still unknown purposes. The same Victor who tried to recreate the God Tree on his own, which shows he had higher ambitions and was willing to seize power that Kara seemingly would have had if they would have achieved their goals, basically taking the very things that Jigen promised him for himself. So this idea of someone who is human wanting to gain possession of Kawaki for their own selfish goals, it isn't crazy because there's precedent for it before. It would also fit in with the theme of Kawaki as a character being used by others, from his father to Jigen to Ishiki and now Amado, which ironically is exactly what Momoshiki told Kawaki when he said Kawaki was being used by Amado and Kawaki better watch it before he continued to get used by others and eventually fed to the Ten Tails. Those were very pointed words, self-directed at Kawaki, and to say those words to him, keep letting yourself get used by others and you will get fed to the Ten Tails. That was very intentional. Sure, Momoshiki wanted Kawaki for that reason, feed him to the Ten Tails, but Momoshiki wasn't using Kawaki and neither was Code, who had the same goals. So that leaves only Amado when you think about it, at least from the human perspective, meaning Momoshiki might have made an educated guess as to what Amado's motives are, because he did say Amado is pretty sneaky, and that makes the second Otsutsuki who's jumped to that conclusion, because so too did Ishiki jump to that conclusion as well. So in my opinion, the only way that this will work is if Amado's character, if the driving factor to chase the power of an Otsutsuki God is more than just the random cliche of the mad scientist who wants to know more about the universe and he has this insatiable hunger for knowledge. We've already seen someone in Orochimaru want to know all things everywhere. We don't need it overdone. That's not good enough to be a motivating factor, and it will run the risk of being stale, even if you play with the cliche of man chasing knowledge beyond his comprehension and it ends up being his downfall, similar to how Icarus flew way too close to the sun. However, this does work if you take the lines and connect them to Amado's dead daughter, which you guys know is something I've been saying ever since we learned Amado's last name because of the strong Japanese mythology that is tied to the name itself. In the mythology, you have Amado's last name being tied to the river where children who died way too young had to cross, and the strong connections to the underworld itself. If we get something like that says that Amado's attempting to achieve the power of an Otsutsuki God because he's trying to bring back his dead daughter, that's something that does work well narratively. It explains why Jigen once told him, everyone will get their dreams fulfilled once we harvest a chakra fruit, even yourself. But Amado, being the mad scientist that he is, wouldn't settle for just being in a dream world known as the infinite Tsukiyomi just to be with his daughter, because Amado knows deep down in his heart that's just an illusion. Instead, Amado's more the type to say, well, if Otsutsuki can move to other dimensions, summon things from other dimensions, why couldn't they move to the underworld, or what we know to be the Pure Land? There's actually reference of an Otsutsuki being able to access the Pure Land and recall souls. We've seen this happen before. We saw Hagoromo, who not only was able to exist across space and time itself, but he was able to summon all the dead Kage from every generation from the Pure Land and into the physical realm. If Hagoromo could do something like this without having to eat a chakra fruit, what could someone who attains the status of an Otsutsuki God do, especially if they eaten multiple chakra fruits? In fact, Otsutsuki have more than one way that they've been able to access the afterlife, because in a more dramatic fashion, the Otsutsuki have the option to use the Rinnegan. But when the art of the Rinne Rebirth casts the soul of the user into the underworld to retrieve the dead souls to bring them back to life, the end result is the death of the user, which is a reminder Nagato's statement that it was linked to chakra was retconned later on in the war in Naruto's manga, as well as in Naruto Databook 4, where it is specifically listed as a life for a life jutsu. This brings us to why he wants Kawaki. Could the karma seal prove to be the key to accessing the underworld, in particular Kawaki's karma? Could this be a way to access limbo where Amado's daughter might be? Narratively, it could be something that works, both to make Amado a more sympathetic character and to explain why a human would go so far to help an Otsutsuki vessel in Jigen and force Kawaki to take back the karma of Ishiki that Kawaki never wanted. In fact, it opens up the door for Kawaki to hate Amado even more, because Kawaki would be the first one to say, why should he or anybody else care for Amado's dead daughter when Amado was content with sacrificing children such as Kawaki in order to reach his goals? And that would tie into one of Boruto's overall themes, which is Boruto's story is a story of parents and children, just as much as it's the story of can science and ninjutsu coexist with one another. What makes her life that much more important than, say, Kawaki's own or any of the other children who died in the experiments to give them the karma seal? It actually makes a ton of sense for Kawaki to take that stance, and Amado, being the untrustworthy sussy baka that he is right now, he now has a shutdown code over Kawaki to both keep Konoha off his back and force Kawaki to do what he wants. You can also go the route that, since he has that shutdown code specifically in place, to use once code's been defeated and once the Ten Tails unguarded, at which point he can use the shutdown sequence on Kawaki, make off of Kawaki's unconscious body to the Ten Tails, assuming he has some device to take him there, which narratively would fit into what Amado likes to do, which is not reveal all of his information to people who rely on him, because if he shared that technology with Konoha, there'd be no need for them to use Ada and Daemon. They could have just gone straight for code and to the Ten Tails prior to this. Narratively, either of these routes raises the stakes even higher, but that being said, for as cool as all that sounds, that Amado's going to be this cliche scientist trying to play God, attain God's power, I don't think that this is likely going to be the case. Again, it sounds cool, and much like how Star Wars fans had all these amazing ideas for Emperor Snoke, I think we're running the risk of that with Amado, where the ideas are actually going to be better than what we get. That being said, I do believe this isn't as crazy and I do think there's some merit to this. I personally think that Amado's motives are tied more so to his dead daughter. I'm just not 100% sure on how Kawaki factors into Amado's overall plan, but he does have a role in it. And I do concede Kawaki's character is written as having a theme of a constant betrayal. So the idea of Amado trying to use Kawaki to gain God's power, and that the Otsutsuki God is a concept, this was a good idea. I'm gonna be very curious to see how this one ages. Now, I'm also curious to know you guys' thoughts on this. While you think that over, click here for my Black Clover chapter 342 review, or click here for Konoha in chapter 1, where we see Kakashi Hatake as Hokage fighting against some rogue ninja.